What is going on, YouTube? It is your boy, Faithful to God, and I am joined by my special guest, Abu. Abu, say hello to the audience.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody.
And so today, we're going to be discussing Hebrew Israelites and dubious degrees, dubious diplomas. We're going to go over the history of the movement, various proponents who have unfortunately fallen into the unaccredited degree department. But before we get into that, I would like for my friend Abu to really kind of share some thoughts on this, kind of give everybody a brief overlay of the discussion.
Right. So the general theme that we're going to cover is this pattern of people bestowing upon themselves or taking upon themselves these titles that they didn't earn, at least not in the traditional sense of those titles. And perhaps we should put up a couple of disclaimers because sort of anticipating the sort of the responses we're going to get. The first disclaimer that we're going to put up, because we expect that someone will say, "But aren't there also Christian pastors with honorary degrees and degrees from unaccredited institutions?" And the answer is yes. Yeah, that definitely does exist. And in fact, I would say that some of the Israelites who are playing this game have imported it from their past. With certain churches. But to give an example, and I'll say this, when it happens amongst mainstream Christians, it's treated as fair game. So I'll give you a rather popular example, an example that's been discussed for, man, a quarter century now, maybe more. And that's James White. You see, James White, known popularly as Dr. James White, his PhD was from an unaccredited institution. He's been very open about that. And apparently he did it online in the late 90s. And
His doctorate, his
his
doctorate
doctorate,
in
yes, he has a master's from a legitimate institution. He has a master's degree from Fuller, but his doctorate he got from an online institution. And first, the Mormons. There's a lot of educated Mormons out there, as they have their own university. The Mormons were the first to point that out, and then certain Catholics got involved as well. And what I would say is that it's fair game. It's anybody who has a degree from an unaccredited institution. It's at least fair to point that out, whether they be Christian or Israelite. The second response that I'm anticipating is someone's going to say something to the effect of, "Well, do you feel that a person's arguments are invalid or unsound if they don't have a degree?" And the answer is no. That's not what we're saying. We're not claiming that you need to have degrees from accredited institutions. I myself don't have a doctorate yet. I mentioned that in our past video that we did on Kelly Richardson's curious doctorate. So no, we're not claiming that you need these degrees, but before anyone tries to pull that, "Well, who cares?" sort of objection, just note that the men who declared themselves to be doctors, the men we're going to be exploring in this video, they certainly felt the need to bestow these titles upon themselves. And the question should be why, if it doesn't matter. But go ahead.
Absolutely. And I think it's important that we point out that the criticism is for it's not just relegated towards Hebrew Israelites. Of course, the stream is going to be dealing in particular with Hebrew Israelites, but the same criticism can also be leveled at others. And for example, someone like James White, who is a reputable Christian apologist, someone who has done a lot of great work for the Christian community. It's still the case that his doctorate was unaccredited, his initial doctorate, and he's currently in the process of actually getting a actual doctorate. He's actually enrolled himself in a
That's my
legitimate.
understanding. I
Yeah,
don't know that for a fact, but that's the rumor that I've heard, that he's currently working on a PhD with an accredited
yeah,
institution. And by the
and
way,
if
James,
that's
he's a
yeah,
great example of someone who may not have a degree from an accredited institution, but nonetheless is brilliant. So he's an example of how the lack of a degree from an accredited institution does not disqualify your arguments. It doesn't render them
yeah.
automatically unsound.
And if it is the case that he is in a accredited place of higher learning, then that's wonderful. It shows that he himself took the criticism seriously, right? He felt the need to rectify something that was an error, if in fact it is the case that this is true. Hopefully, our friends who are going to be mentioned today will also do the same thing. Hopefully, they too will feel the conviction.
God willing, God willing. I have doubts about some of them, but God willing.
So if we could, I think it would be good for us to kind of give I guess like a kind of history, if you will, like who are some of the earliest guys on record that you know of, at
Well,
the very least, not necessarily the earliest, but just among the earliest.
Well, as far as Israelites and doctorates that seem unearned, I mean, probably the earliest one I know of is Dr. Jermaine Grant, because 20 years ago, Tazadakia was calling himself. He had a TV show on public access television, and he was calling it Mysteries of the Bible with Dr. Jermaine Grant, and he would wear a suit and tie, and we'll be discussing him briefly in this video. So that's the earliest one I know of, and it's an example of, I think, someone copying from the surrounding churches. I think he was doing that to sort of mirror some of the pastors that he saw either on television or just in the area of New York. But we'll be talking about someone way earlier than that, who two gentlemen who didn't necessarily have claimed doctorates, but they did claim the title rabbi, and that'll be Josiah Ford and Wentworth Matthew, and we'll discuss
Arnold
them.
Josiah Ford, yeah.
Yes, yeah, and we'll be discussing them briefly because it has some relevant. Because I don't know if you're going to show the letter that Ford sent with when he participated in the ordination of Wentworth Matthew, but that has some relevance because he talks about the psychological benefit of having these public titles. He was referring to rabbi rather than doctor, but I think the logic is the same, and perhaps we should jump into that.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I'm going to pull that up on my screen. So we're going to be looking at several sources today. So let's actually start with a one that people can find easily online. So this is from blackamericaweb.com. Let me actually do something real quick. Just make sure that people can see this. All right, here we go. So our first source is going to be from Black America Web Online. This article was by, let's see, who was this gentleman? I believe it was D.L. Chandler, and it's little known Black history fact, Arnold Josiah Ford. So I'm going to share the link. Just give me a second. Here we go. Give me one moment, just one moment. All right, so I'm going to share the link. Hopefully, the link can be seen. And I'm going to go ahead and go into full screen. So hopefully everybody can see this. Hopefully it's not too small. And
Yep, I can see it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, good.
No, I was just saying I can see it.
So this gives a biography of Arnold Josiah Ford, Arnold J. Ford, also known as Josiah Ford. And here's the relevant section that I wanted to read. All right, here we go. Let's see. Where was it? Where was it? Right here. Ah, here it is. As the UNIA, hold on one second. All right, here we go. As the UNIA began to dissolve after Garvey's arrest, so the UNIA was the foundation that Marcus Garvey had founded, that Arnold Josiah Ford was a part of at one point. It says, as the UNIA began to dissolve after Garvey's arrest and conviction, Ford focused on opening a synagogue in Harlem and spreading the Judaic tradition. Ford declared himself a rabbi and opened Beth B'nai Israel at a storefront.
I think you misread that. Surely it says that someone else ordained him. So who ordained him? Read it again. Because you misread it.
Ford declared himself a rabbi and opened Beth B'nai Israel at a storefront.
I got it. All right. So Arnold Josiah Ford was ordained by Arnold Ford.
Yeah. Now, interestingly enough, it says, as Ford grew in the faith and expanded his membership, the synagogue was renamed Beth B'nai Abraham. The white Jews who frequented the area observed Ford's practices and even praised his authenticity, but fell short of recognizing Ford as a rabbi. So interesting, right? So the rabbis in his area didn't recognize him, although they recognized that some of his practices were, they seemed authentic in terms of his convictions, but nevertheless, he wasn't recognized in the mainstream sense as a rabbi. But what I'd like to do is to go into several sources, because unfortunately, this website doesn't provide any citations. It would be important to look at some citations. In fact, real quick, before we go into this, I do want to say that this is not intended to be any sort of disrespect to Arnold Josiah Ford or the the person that he later, which will reveal later, ordinated himself, quote unquote. But it is meant to show this pattern that, even very early on, you had Hebrew Israelites showing this sort of pattern. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into several relevant sources. So the first one that we're going to look at is from James Landing's book, Black Judaism. This is going to be from page 129, and then we're going to read pages 130 and 134 after this. So starting with page 129, just to give some sources, because we want to make sure that people understand that the claim that was made on that website wasn't just some haphazard claim with no evidence behind it, right? So let's give a little history of Arnold Josiah Ford, where he came from. And it says, actually, let me get to the relevant part. It says, Arnold J. Ford was born in Barbados in about 1876, the son of a fervent Christian evangelist, and arrived in Harlem in about 1911. Ford had always been interested in music, had been an instructor for the British Navy, and was serving as an office clerk when he departed for the United States. So notice that when Ford came to the U.S., he wasn't identifying necessarily as a Jew. It was more like, he came from a Christian background. So Ford came to the United States, and then obviously, uh, you know, things changed after the fact. As we'll see, Ford became a member of the James Reese Europe's famous Harlem musical group, the Clef Club. Europe had organized most of Harlem's talented musicians and controlled the quote-unquote entertainers business through bookings. It is likely that Ford participated in the Clefs Club noted jazz concert and consisted of 125 performers, which was held at Carnegie Hall in May 1912, including Walter Damrosch and Rodman Wanamaker as sponsors. During the First World War, Europe had formed the group into the band for the 15th, New York's Colored National Guard Regiment. Ford, however, did not participate, so far as known, became a devoted follower of Marcus Garvey, the Jamaican founder of the UNIA, in short time. Ford became the choir master of Liberty Hall, Garvey's headquarters in Harlem. So I'll just stop there just so we can get a brief overlay that he was introduced to Marcus Garvey. And now what we can do is we can go to page 129, and we can see that our friend Arnold Ford, we'll see in a moment. Here we go. Just give me a second. Let me just get the relevant section. Yeah, here it is. So on page 129, something interesting is mentioned. Here it is. So after some time, Ford, being influenced by Marcus Garvey, begins to reject Christianity. He begins to see it as a white man's religion, quote unquote, even though, ironically enough, Marcus Garvey himself was Catholic. So, interesting that he thought that it was somehow a white man's religion, but then the guy that he's following himself identifies as Christian. So what's interesting is as we continue to read, it says, so basically he fell out with Garvey, as you can see right here. I'm just going to pause it so we don't have to read everything. And then, of course, it says here that Ford envisioned himself as the destined leader of the, and I won't use the term, but you can see it on your screens, political future. That's the term that was used back then, unfortunately. So he came into contact with Mordecai Herman, another Black Jew in Harlem, and they formed a kind of loose partnership. Now, it says the merger was short-lived. Ford set about to establish the doctrine of Black Hebrew descent and identity. He insisted on the title rabbi and desired autonomy in scheduling his music group on tours. There were probably quarrels over money handling since Ford had attracted attention and the support of some white Jews. Herman had little popular appeal and claimed Ford took advantage of him. So Ford and his group established their own congregation called Beth B'nai Abraham, Congregation or House of the Sons of Abraham, an Ethiopian Hebrew school, and a social group called the Arionoth club that consisted of many Black professionals, which was designed to assist in raising funds and encouraging immigration to Africa. So the reason that I pointed this out is because I wanted people to see that it was Ford himself who takes on the title of rabbi. So we're going to go to page 134.
Hmm. He was self-ordained.
Yeah, self-ordained, right? So, and I want to show other sources that are going to corroborate this, because I want to make sure that Hebrew Israelites who watch this can see that we've got several citations, very clear citations that highlight this fact. Here we go. Here we go. Let me just give me a second. Yeah. Here we go. So that was page 130. I'm pulling up page 134. My apologies. So we can, yeah, here it is. So this was some of the reasoning, pardon me, that Arnold Josiah Ford gave for himself. Lands indicated, so Lands is in reference to the now deceased scholar Ruth Lands, and we're going to be looking at her work in a moment that tackles the issue, the controversy of Arnold J. Ford identifying as a rabbi. Lands indicated that both Ford's parents had ancestral roots in Nigeria, his father being a Yoruba and his mother a Mende, that they were strict observers of Jewish rituals, although unaware that they were Jewish, and they had engaged teachers to instruct them in Hebrew and the Talmud. A seeming paradox given the unawareness of his parents' Judaism, and unlikely given the fact that Ford's father was a Christian evangelist. So keeping in mind that a lot of this was being drawn from people after the fact, like maybe his relatives, that kind of thing, after they had already been influenced by Ford. And so when Ruth Lands went trying to find out more about Arnold Ford, she encountered people who were clearly after the fact trying to anachronistically make Ford seem more legitimate than what he actually was. Now, it says, as a descendant of a priest, information provided by his mother, Ford was a quote-unquote Kohen and did not need formal ordination to become a rabbi. So the excuse was that since he was supposedly a Kohen, conveniently now that he started identifying as, an Israelite, he didn't need formal ordination. Thus, his claim of being a rabbi was pretty much his own invention. So what we can do now is we're going to look at two more sources. We're going to go through these quickly. So we're going to look at Chosen People. This is Jacob Dorman's book. And we're going to look at page 121. 121. And we're going to go down to the section towards the bottom. So this is the relevant section. Here we go. I'm going to get through these fast. And it reads, there was friction between Ford and his collaborators that continued in 1924 when he and Herman argued over Ford's use of the title, quote unquote, rabbi. All right. So let me actually get the next page. My apologies. Yep. Here we go. Just to continue the thought, it's going to be a very short sentence. Here we go. Rabbi, and desired to take his choir on professional concert tours. Herman had no popular following of his own. He was overshadowed by Ford's intelligence and charisma and felt that Ford took advantage of him. Just as they had once left the UNIA to join the MZT, Ford and Valentine left, and so on and so on. So it just explains that he ended up starting his own little group. So and of course this right here explains something interesting, but I think it's fascinating to see that Ford was self-ordinated. All right, that's what we wanted to establish, the point of him being self-ordinated. Now we're going to look at
Yeah, he was self-ordained, and then he went
ordained.
on to
Ordained.
no problem. He was self-ordained, and then he goes on to ordain another prominent figure within the early years of the Israelite spectrum.
Just one more source, Ruth Lands. So we'll briefly tackle this. So this is from her work in the Jewish Journal of Sociology, and we're going to get to the relevant section right here. Yep, here it is. Ford agreed. He said that at the time of his plan was to develop a professional singing group. Thus, the Morris Zionist Church appeared toward the close of 1924. Some local white Jews gave their patronage, Ford particularly winning their attention. Soon, the church split over dissensions between Ford and Herman. Ford insisted on the title of rabbi and expected complete freedom to take his group on professional concert tours. Herman had no following and no popular appeal, and he claimed that Ford took advantage of him. Thus, Ford and his choir established their own organization, the Congregation Beth B'nai Abraham, or BBA. Herman nevertheless carried on as the Morris Zionist Church with the aid of a bearded Southern, I'm not going to use the term, named Sledge, who later Hebraicized his name to Mordecai. All right, so what I want to do is I want to skip down here. Ford now asserted a hereditary right to the office of rabbi. So it says, thus self-sanctioned, this is important, thus self-sanctioned, he assembled evidence of the identity or close relationship of Hebrew theology and language with the African or quote-unquote Ethiopian. He claimed that the African language is Arabic, influenced probably by the Arab dominance in West Africa. He said that the original Hebrews were the ancestors of the present Islamicized Hausa-speaking peoples, that the ancient path of Jewish migration was from the Ile Ife, or Nigeria, towards to Egypt, and thence north to Palestine. He said that Ife means Garden of Eden, and Ile means island or land island, that Nigeria was the cradle of the Hebrews, but Nigeria is not the true name. He said for the name was originally Accra as an empire, pardon me. He knew that Accra is the historical name of the seaport on the Gold Coast, now Ghana, but asserted that it was the name of the city in Palestine. Inconsistencies or non sequiturs like this aroused no criticism from his following. He said that some of the white Jews, he said that some whites are Jews because of the ancient settlement in Nigeria, but the dark Nigerians are really white people burnt by the sun. So you can see that he came up with a lot of wild theories for why he should be a rabbi, right? All of them, if examined critically, come up wanting. Just really wild stuff. And you can see some more here. We won't read everything, but just a bunch of wild stuff. But this was essentially his excuse for claiming to be a rabbi, even though he was self-ordained. He basically ordained himself as a rabbi, and even
He ordained
his
somebody else, though.
that is true. If you could speak to that briefly while I pull up the sources.
Yes, I don't know if you're pulling up the letter or the certificate, but for those who don't know, Ford was instrumental in ordaining Wentworth Matthew, the leader of the Commandment Keepers. And this is significant because in the letter, Ford alludes to the psychological benefit of publicly displaying this sort of certificate and the prestige that comes with it and so
In
on.
fact,
Go ahead.
before we get to that, my apologies. Before we get to that, could we briefly just tackle? So this is from Chosen People. It discusses this what we're about to show. Just briefly, so we can give
Okay,
people
go ahead.
a bit of a overlay. So let me actually pull up the source. So I'm going to be pulling up. I'm going to be pulling up pages 129, 141, and 163. So I'm going to start with 129. The first and foremost show that Arnold Josiah Ford was responsible for ordaining Wentworth Arthur Matthew as a rabbi. The issue was that not only was Arnold Ford himself not ordained, but Wentworth Arthur Matthew wasn't identifying as a rabbi prior to being ordained by Ford. So if we could, let me actually just get to the relevant section. Here we go. Yeah. In the 20s, Beth B'nai Abraham flourished rapidly, becoming the largest Black Israelite synagogue in Harlem and attracting visitors such as Wentworth A. Matthew, who was still using the title bishop, not rabbi. So we established with this that at the very least in the 20s, Rabbi who would become Rabbi Matthew was not being called rabbi, but rather Bishop Matthew. All right. So
That's
now
significant that he was originally called bishop, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Now we go to 149 and just to oops. Here we go. Again, this is in Jacob Dorman's book, Chosen People. And it says right here, yeah. In June of 1931, Ford sent a certificate of ordination to Rabbi Matthew, signed by priest Aliaka Barnabas of the Church of Darbre Miku in Gondor, which Matthew would proudly display in his office for many decades and offer as a proof of his ordination as an Ethiopian Hebrew rabbi.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't
That's
that interesting?
offered it
That
as proof. You think we could pull up the letter?
yes,
So, so,
absolutely.
so I'll say this for those who don't know. Uh, when Ford basically ordained Wentworth Matthew as a rabbi, the leader of the commandment keepers as a rabbi, he sent him a certificate that he could show to others. But he didn't merely send it in case he wanted to show it to others. He encouraged him to do so. And
Yeah.
yes, here's the letter if you want to read through it. Just this first page.
Yeah. So it says Rabbi W.A. Matthew, and it gives his location. It says, and this was sent to him by Arnold Josiah Ford. So it says, "My dear Rabbi Matthew, greetings to you, your family, and your congregation, and the blessing of Allah." You want me to keep reading, or?
Yeah, no. So that just real quick, we don't have to get into it deeply, but there was a rumor amongst the Israelites in New York that Ford had converted to Islam while he was in Ethiopia. Seems plausible that the blessings of Allah. It doesn't prove it, but it at least says something about the plausibility. But go ahead, continue.
Interestingly enough, Dorman and Landing's books detail Arnold Josiah Ford's sort of amalgamating of certain ideas from
Hmm.
Islam. So he would kind of take a little bit from Christianity, a little bit from Islam, and
Hmm.
of course, a lot from Judaism, and mix them together in this kind of melting pot sort of way. So it's
Yeah,
actually tackled in both those books.
I imagine that might have accelerated when he got to Ethiopia, being that like half the country is Muslim. But anyway,
Yeah. Now it says here, my dear Rabbi Matthew, greetings to yourself and your family and your congregation and the blessings of Allah. I have sent you by post registered your certificate of ordination. Have Brother Elder Philip and Brother Elder Payne sign it, and then you may frame it. Indeed, I have sent it for safety directly to you, but I am writing the congregation and asking them to deliver it officially to you in a public gathering. This is more in keeping with our ritualistic procedure, and indeed, the psychological effect would benefit everyone.
and for me, that's significant because here's the thing. People would, like, as we alluded to earlier, people would ask, "Oh, well, if even if he doesn't have a legitimate rabbinic ordination, what difference does it make?" Well, you can say that it doesn't make any difference either way, but clearly these men saw there being a difference, saw there being some significance, and I think it's significant that Ford showed consciously, he consciously and explicitly said that there's psychological benefit to presenting this publicly. And frankly, he was right. Here we are 90 years later, more than 90 years later, there are still people walking around New York who sincerely believe that Matthew had legitimate rabbinic ordination because someone they trusted, it could be a family member, a parent, an uncle, an aunt, or just someone like a teacher, but someone who they revere, some old timer that they respect, sincerely told them that they saw the certificate. There were people trafficking in this. I guess, these stories about this amazing certificate from authorities in Africa, which declared, Wentworth Matthew a rabbi. And
Yeah,
here's the certificate.
and here's the certificate right here. Interestingly enough,
And the people who signed it. So you'll notice the first signature in the cursive Hebrew script is Rabbi Ford, right? Then underneath it, it's this name in Amharic, which is oh no, that says Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. But so underneath it, then the third line, which is the second line in Amharic, is the signature of this person, Alaka Barnabas or something like that. Yeah, Barnabas. And apparently he was a priest. So it raises the question, like, how
in
is a
a Christian church.
yes, a priest in an Orthodox Christian church. It's like
Yeah.
Ethiopian Orthodox, and it's like very strange. I wonder what that guy Alaka Barnabas, what he thought he was signing, because just as it would be, like imagine if I started going around claiming a priest in the Orthodox Church, Orthodox Christian
and
priest,
and then get an ordination or a signature
from a
from
rabbi.
a Muslim, or no, or
Yeah,
from a Muslim.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but even if it was a rabbi, people would say, well, he doesn't have any authority to ordain you as a priest. And the same goes in the other directions. A priest in the Orthodox Church doesn't have any authority to ordain someone as a rabbi, you know? And then, of course, there's this guy, J.S. Phillips. So basically, it's Ford ordaining Matthew, but he made this very nice official looking certificate with three different scripts in Semitic scripts, which probably added to the mystery for the congregation. Could you go all the way to the top? I think there's even the basmala at the top. Yeah, there it is. All the way at the top, there's Arabic. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim above the Hebrew. That's the text that starts 113 of the 114 chapters of the Quran. Although there are also Jews and Christians who have historically used that, it's mainly an Islamic phrase, or used by Muslims, mainly used by Muslims. But whatever the case, it's this very official looking certificate, which convinced people, and it really did come from Africa because Ford sent it while he was in Ethiopia. So the
yeah, and
congregation.
then all it has all the trimmings, or what looks like the trimmings of an actual degree, but in reality, the guy who was ordaining Matthew as a rabbi himself was self-ordained. He had no
Exactly.
accreditation. Matthew had no accreditation. And if we could, very briefly, because I know our time is short, what
Sure.
I'd like to do is briefly. Oops, let me just pull up this. This is from page 163 from the Dorman Chosen People book.
Mhm.
And here we go. And we'll see something interesting at the top. It says, the curricula of the two schools Matthew, this is Wentworth, Arthur Matthew ran, show his religious evolution towards Judaism as he labored to train new rabbis and build relationship with other Black Israelite leaders. Now, what I wanted to point out is that, it says, here we go, in 1940, it says, in 1940, then using the title quote unquote rabbi, Matthew published a similar curriculum of the Ethiopian Hebrew Rabbinical College of the Royal Order of Ethiopian.
So he
Hebrews,
started his own college, his own
yeah,
seminary.
Hebrews and the Commandment Keepers Congregation of the Living God, INC, along with a statement of the beliefs of the Commandment Keepers. The rabbinical school curriculum was essentially the same as that of the earlier ecclesiastical curriculum, except that it replaced Jesus Christ with the cultural house of Israel, or the kingdom to come. Significantly, Matthew's later lessons plan replaced Jews in most places with Israelites, and Israelitish ancient and medieval history replaced Jewish ancient and medieval history.
Hmm.
So what's interesting is that he was ordaining people in his congregation as rabbis. So an
Hmm.
unaccredited rabbi, in the conventional sense,
Right.
was ordaining other people
Yep. Set
unconventionally.
set up an unaccredited college. Apparently, called it a college.
Called it a college. Yeah,
And with that, I think it's appropriate now to jump to some of the more modern figures that we're going to be briefly looking at in this discussion. Uh,
absolutely
so you already have a video. We have a past discussion on your channel from a while back about Kelly
correct.
Richardson. Kelly Richardson is known as Dr. Kelly Richardson because he received a doctorate from Rehoboth International Bible College. And that is likewise an unaccredited institution. Interestingly, it changed its
If
claim
I
of
could just
accreditation.
show it on my screen
Yes,
real
please do.
quick, um, the relevant video. Let me.
While you're pulling that up, I'll say this. It's my understanding that there's a bit of a parallel here. Just as Matthew was ordained by a man who ordained himself, who therefore didn't have legitimate ordination, so too it's my understanding that the woman who bestowed a doctorate upon Kelly Richardson herself has a doctorate from a non-accredited institution. Maybe I'm mistaken about that,
Mm,
but that's the understanding I have. And it's like there's sort of this chain
steady
of.
pattern of behavior too. That
Yeah, yeah.
unaccredited people are ordaining other people.
And there's
Which,
chains of like transmission of authority going on.
yeah, if you can see right here, this is the video that I premiered in pardon me, April 10th of 2021. The Dubious Doctorate of Kelly Richardson. We woke now.
Hmm.
So if anybody's interested, you could watch this video for further reference. But
2021 was an interesting year because 2021 was also the year that Will Brown got his doctorate. Apparently, oh no, he got his master's in late 2021, and I think early 2022 he got his doctorate. But
well, real
2021 is
quick,
also in. So go
yeah,
ahead. I was Ron Shields, Divine Prospect. But go ahead.
yeah, yeah. Which we're going to address those two in a moment. But what I wanted to do very briefly before I forget is to show Rehoboth International's website. So if you go and watch that video, and for the record, for those who are going to be watching this in the future, the sources are going to be linked in the description. So I'll have the links, the direct links for a lot of the stuff that can be directly linked to. So Rehoboth International Bible College, interestingly enough, we showed in the 2021 video who they were claiming to be accredited by, which itself was an unaccredited institution, at least in the conventional sense. And so here is the website, and this is their current, so the original place that accredited them. Give me 1 second. Let me just do this real quick. This was the place that originally accredited them. Here, I'll do it side by side so people understand. Here we go. So people can see that we showed this in the previous video that we did, and I'll just switch between screens. So it was the World Council of Post-Secondary and Religious Education, which itself is not associated with the U.S. Department of Education, which means that it's not accredited. And so this is Rehoboth International, and it says right here, let me
yes, this is, you're currently on the current version of Rehoboth
the
International.
current version.
So this
If
is
you
the
watched our
website.
video from 2021, they were previously accredited, and you'll see right here where it says prior to August of 2021, Rehoboth International Bible College was accredited by the World Council of Post-Secondary and Religious Education and Global Evangelical Accrediting Commission, both through the NCI Bible College and School of Prophets. Now it says up here, Rehoboth International Bible College is accredited by the Biblical Hebrew Higher Education Accrediting Commission.
Yep. And if I just want to say this, we don't need to get into this, but just for anyone who's interested, try Googling that phrase, the Biblical Hebrew Higher Education Accrediting Commission. The only website mentioning it is Rehoboth International Bible College's website, which is suspicious, to say the least.
Extremely suspicious. Curious, as you would say.
Curious. But that's the institution that gave Kelly Richardson his doctorate. However, aside from Kelly Richardson, Will Brown has a doctorate. He got a master's degree in 2021 and then a doctorate. Any idea what institution awarded him that?
Yeah. So if we could, though, so he was accredited supposedly, or given his degree by what he claims is a Bible college that itself claims to be accredited, but self-accredited. It's a Bible college, quote unquote, called Harvest Reapers International. And but if we could, would you like to show the website, or
yes,
would you like
that's
to
what I would love to do. Yes, because I think it's important to see the website. I could say the interesting writing of the website might reveal something about the level of rigor that goes into the education there.
Yeah, here we go. So this is Reapers International, their website. We'll go to the About Us section.
And so this is the
says Harvest Reapers International School of Ministry and Bible Institute opened its doors on February 12, 2012. Since, S-E-N-S-E, since, not since then, we have graduated over 1,000 ministers, pastors, chaplains, and life coaches, and still growing. We are a 501c3 tax-exempt organization meeting all the ecclesiastical requirements of the FGCFI, making us a nonprofit religious organization. The Institute has its certificate of accreditation as a Christian Education Institute. The school also offers a theological degree certificate program. Our degrees or Christian ministry and spirituality. Our degrees or Christian ministry and spirituality. Let it be known, our degrees or not secular, meaning are not secular, but they put or not secular. Neither are we a secular institute, meaning they're unaccredited. We strongly believe in higher education learning of God for the winning of souls of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Jesus said, we are in the world, not of the world. And so if you look up here, the FGCFI is the Full Gospel of Christ Fellowship INC. Clearly not a, an accredited institute that, and essentially they give their information there. I don't want
but
that.
So this is with that level of writing, right? This is the institution that gave a master's degree and then a doctorate to Will Brown. And I think it
Yeah,
leaves
and I wanted to
much.
because there were some phone numbers, so I don't want anyone to accuse us of doxing, even though this is a public website. But you know how
Hmm.
some of
Yes.
our friends are. You know, when inconvenient information comes out, then the feigned outrage comes out. So we want to make sure that we're not doing anything that would be considered nefarious. All of
Hmm.
this is public information, and if we could, let's take a look at our friend Will Brown. Let's look at some images.
Oh yeah.
So real quick, before we do that, I want everybody to focus in on the Harvest Reapers International and the gentleman in the middle, because you're gonna see something in a moment. In case anybody is gonna pretend that this gentleman right here, I believe his name is yeah, here it is. His name is Howard Atkins Jr., Apostle Atkins.
Hmm.
He's in the middle. We're going to see in a moment that this is the same individual who presented William Brown with his
Master's degree and presumably his doctorate.
yeah, and we'll show these back to back. Here we go. So as you can see right here, here is Atkins and here is Brown receiving his quote
His
unquote
master's.
degree.
Yep.
Yeah,
His master's. Yep.
and we'll go back here and we've redacted this because we don't want to be nefarious and post anybody on the screen that doesn't need to be on the screen. And it says, these are the moments I cherish. I don't care what people say about me, what I believe, what I teach. I am a Christian. I am an Israelite. I am Jewish.
Am I Jewish? Am I a Torah
oh,
keeper?
oh,
It looks almost like he's asking questions.
am I okay? He said, yeah. What I teach, am I Christian? Am I an Israelite? Am I Jewish? Am I a Torah keeper? Should I be trust? Should I be trust?
Should he be
What is he
trusted?
doing?
Some of us think. I mean, yeah. Because of past fiascos, some feel he should not be trusted. But whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. He's not doing enough to prove he's on our side, and all the controversy people are yapping about in these religious communities. She's been, yeah. So he mentions
He's
his,
referring to a family member. Yeah,
yeah,
someone.
someone, yeah.
And we
And
redacted this because we don't want to, bring his family
yeah, of
into it. But
course. He says, it says right here, it says the prophetic word was spoken regarding me attending Bible college, and I fought against that. And she was here yesterday to see me walking with my name was called as I earned my master's in theology on my way to earning my doctoral
doctoral
degree.
degree. Yeah, and he got
Yeah,
his doctorate just a few months after this. I don't know. It might be like 2 or 3.
yeah.
I think it was
And then
6 months. By June, he was Dr. Will Brown. So he got his. This is referring to when he got his master's degree, and he got a doctorate shortly thereafter. And apparently, it's from this
yeah.
Harvest Reapers Institution, which we just saw with
And
the
then and here's
curious
some images right here
grandmothers.
where he's getting this, and notice that the degree even looks like it's legitimate, right? But
It looks similar to the the
yeah,
certificate
the
that
the, the
Matthew
Arnold
got.
Josiah Ford one, right? That he
Yeah,
gave Matthew.
yeah.
Interesting stuff. So here we would like to show after receiving these accolades. And now this right here says Harvest Reapers Georgia classes start January 20th virtually. You still have time if you're interested in signing up for our online degree program. Email me at Dr. Brown,
Wait.
Dr. William Brown,
Yeah. Wow.
Dr. Brown, like, almost like Dr. Michael Brown at dot harvestreapers at gmail. And I'll send
So
you the
just to be clear,
application to get started.
he's now some sort of a, I don't know, an administrator or a teacher or something like that at Harvest Reapers, the institution that gave him his doctorate
Yeah.
and master's degree. Yeah, there it
And
is,
as you can
Dr.
see,
William
yeah,
Brown.
yeah, look right here. Dr. William Brown, executive director and state director of Georgia. So
Wow. Yeah, that that
uh
reminds me of Rehoboth. I don't know what became of this, but Rehoboth, I remember, said that they wanted Kelly Richardson to be like their chair of like Hebrew Israelite apologetics or something like that. I don't know what
yeah.
became of that. Whew.
Yeah,
Okay.
and one more thing, if I could, one more thing
Mm-hmm.
relevant to Will,
Mm-hmm.
our friend Will, aka Richard Katz. Now let me stop.
No,
No,
Richard
no.
Katz had a PhD with a capital H.
Yeah, with a capital H, and so does William Brown apparently now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So here's William Brown. He says, we taught this workshop a few weeks ago for the first time, and it was a major success, and it's being taught again, but this time will be in McDonough, Georgia. If you're a leader or someone, yeah, if you're a leader or someone who wants to grow more in your biblical studies and leadership, this workshop is for you. We will be discussing importance of studying the Logos and how to use research tools, and then gives all the stuff, and then there you go.
Bishop Dr. William Brown.
Bishop Dr. William Brown.
Yep. Okay. with that, can we? Do you want to? We're going to get to Divine Prospect now, as I understand it,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
this
Let's
is,
get
for
to
me,
them.
it gets a little bit interesting. There's going to be parallels, but there's also going to be some differences. I think, some curious differences.
Some interesting differences. In
Yes.
fact, if you could
So you
introduce the
already,
section.
yeah. So while you're getting prepared for that, what I'll say for anyone who's interested is that Faithful's channel and my channel as well, but Faithful's channel already has a video on this topic of the doctorate of that's was earned by the gentleman known as Divine Prospect back in 2021. And interestingly, I don't know if we'll show it. He had part of his dissertation that he submitted or claimed to have submitted to earn that doctorate, but he seems to have taken it down,
Yeah,
after
before
your
we
video
get to
came
that,
out.
if I could just show the relevant video just briefly,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
like so people can see it. And this is one of my has one of his video. It's actually a combination of two separate videos. Um, one deals with divine, and the other deals with Wentworth Arthur certificate. There we go. Let me just. Are you able to see this?
Let me see. Yes, I can see it.
Yeah, Hebrew Israelites and Dubious Diplomas, Divine Prospect, and Wentworth Arthur Matthew. So you guys can check it out.
Oh, yes. There's also a discussion on Wentworth Matthews certificate. There's a more detailed discussion
Yeah.
in that same video. But yeah, so actually, could you just not necessarily play it, but could you just sort of show a couple of stills from when we looked at his when that video
Yes,
looks at his dissertation, because he put up his
absolutely.
dissertation.
Yeah, here we go. I'm gonna scroll to the relevant portion. Just give me a
So
moment.
just to give you a synopsis of what was discussed in that video, in 2021, uh, Divine Prospect announced on Instagram that he had received his doctorate, but he never says from what institution. That was what was so interesting, but it was very small on the certificate that he shows in that picture, and
Yeah, right
then
there.
there it
So
is.
there's a
Yep.
relevant certificate right there. It's being shown
hmm
on the screen.
The Hebraic Institute of Theology, and now if you could show the his dissertation,
Yeah, let me
because
actually.
it's no longer available. I'm glad that video is recorded, because as of a couple of weeks ago, he still had his dissertation, or at least the shades of a dissertation,
Yeah,
the hints of a dissertation on academia, on
yeah,
academia.edu, if I recall correctly. Yeah.
yeah. Let me actually pull it up.
So,
Yeah,
we
so this is his academia.edu for
with a
those.
certain portion redacted. He redacted the name of the
Yeah, so
institution.
it's on the screen right now. We're seeing it right now.
Yep.
This
No,
is
I know. I see it. Yep. Yep, there it is, the Hebraic Institute of Theology. Because at the time we were able to show that you could do a control F and search, and you would find it in the redacted portions. Because apparently he just changed the background color. But so he was hiding the name of the institution that
yeah,
he got
if I
his.
could actually just briefly, if I could go to the very beginning portion. Yep, let me just pause the screen. There it is. I have it right in front of me. And this is the dissertation right here. So it says THD dissertation. Why a cultural orientation of the ancient Israelite people is necessary for a proper exegesis of the Hebrew Bible draft. And you'll notice that this is on academia.edu. For those who are interested, the academia.edu is linked in this video, and it will also be linked in this the video that we're watching on the screen, and also the live stream that you're watching will be in the description after
So,
we
so,
finish.
so that's what it used to look like. Can we show what it looks like now? The Academia page.
Absolutely. So notice that my friend my friend Abu here was looking at the relevant here we go. Let me actually just do this real quick. Just give me a second. Yeah. So notice that he was able to look at it. He was able to examine it.
Yeah.
Now when we go there,
This is only 2 weeks later, basically.
this is 2 weeks later, and it says request PDF, THD dissertation, why cultural orientation. Same thing that we just read earlier from 2021.
Divine
And
Prospect hasn't uploaded the draft. This draft, excuse me.
which
Yeah,
isn't true, because we just saw a video where
we
my
saw it two
friend
weeks
Abu
ago.
was
Yep.
looking at the draft that was
Yes.
publicly available.
So that means that he took it down. That's what it seems to mean.
Indeed. And so I want to show something for everybody. So this is from Clubhouse. This was literally taken last night. I did this last night. So I had shared the video that you saw on the screen, the Dubious Diplomas, Divine Prospect, Wentworth Arthur Matthew video on Clubhouse. So you'll notice right here that it says 1 week ago. So Divine Prospect exposes what the voice chat. I'll link the voice chat in the description of this live stream when it is finished. So notice that it has the video linked. Notice that it's linked right there. 150 people saw this post, and what I'm going to do in a moment is show who was one of the people that actually saw this relevant post on
Yeah, I'm
Clubhouse.
curious. I'm curious who saw it. Yeah, who
And
might this be?
here it is.
Ah, so the doctoral thesis, the doctoral dissertation, which didn't have any text, it was merely an abstract, was available
By the way,
before.
that contrast, whoa, no bio, short bio.
Yeah,
That's funny, man. That's so funny. That was unintentional, by the way.
yep. But so it's interesting. So the thesis, the doctoral thesis, or the whatever the beginning pages of such was available before you put the video up. He saw your video, and then it ceased to be available afterwards. That's interesting.
Exactly. So what I'd like to do also, so he put out that dissertation and claimed to receive his degree. Now, here's the interesting thing. So this is also from his Clubhouse profile. When one looks at his Clubhouse profile, we're going to see some interesting information that he's now trying to pass along, even though, and we'll talk about this in a second, the institution that he received his degree from has no footprint online. So here's uh, Divine Prospects Clubhouse profile, and notice that it says Doctorate of Theology, THD 2021,
You notice
which
was not there. He doesn't say from what institution though.
exactly. And could you actually speak to that for a moment for the audience to really drive that point home?
So what's interesting is that he doesn't mention what institution it's from. He redacted the name of the institution from the pages, the initial pages of his doctoral dissertation when he had that dissertation up. And then he took the entire dissertation down, apparently. Right? That's interesting. And as you alluded to, it doesn't seem to have any sort of footprint. It doesn't seem to have any online footprint. When you do a search for it, the only thing you can find, there are a couple of other people online claiming to have studied there as well. But the thing is, it doesn't have a website, and that's suspicious, to put it mildly. I think, these kind of institutions are generally into self-promotion, because, like, for example, the institution that gave Kelly Richardson his doctorate has its own website promoting itself. The institution that gave Will Brown his doctorate is likewise has a website promoting itself, but this institution doesn't, even now, even close to 3 years after giving him a doctorate. I find that suspicious, to put it mildly. And I fear, I'm not saying this is necessarily the case, but it's at least a legitimate possibility. I fear it might be the case that either this institution didn't really exist in a meaningful way, or maybe Divine Prospect himself played some role in forming it. It's strange that it doesn't have much of a presence online, and so that's mysterious.
Absolutely. It's very strange, man. And I would say that it again speaks to this sort of pattern of wanting to identify as being a doctor or some sort of scholar without actually going through the proper rigors of academia to obtain that distinction. And I think that it does a disservice to those who actually spent a good deal of time going through all the various channels
Mm.
to acquire their proper education. I'm not saying that the gentleman in question, any of them, didn't have any sort of formal education elsewhere, but at the very least, in the areas that they were claiming to have the relevant education, insofar as being a rabbi or having a doctor's degree, none of these gentlemen actually have legitimate ordination. None of them have legitimate, accredited
Mm.
degrees insofar as doctorates are concerned or rabbinic ordination is concerned.
So actually, let me say something about that, about the men that we've looked at. I don't know a lot about Divine Prospect, so I can't speak about him. He seems like a fairly intelligent gentleman, so I'm not going to say anything negative about him. With regards to Kelly Richardson and Will Brown, I am more familiar with them than I am with Divine Prospect. And one thing I'll say is that they don't seem to exhibit signs of having gone through the rigors of academia. You know, that's something that stood out for me, especially with Kelly Richardson. And so that's why it becomes even more disturbing when they try to leapfrog to claiming these prestigious titles. I don't know where Divine Prospect falls within that. He seems, from the little bit I've seen, perhaps he's, more. he displays more of that erudition than Kelly and Brown do. But nonetheless, as far as Kelly and Brown are concerned, I think it's even more glaring. But then on the other hand, it would be even more glaring on the other side if it turns out that this institution is less of a reality than are the institutions that gave Kelly and Brown their degrees. That's suspicious. And another thing, now, again, I don't know much about Divine Prospect, but perhaps you could fill me in on this. People tell me that he's somewhat interested in self-promotion as well, and promoting himself. He's big on sharing his information and that sort of thing. It would be interesting to ask the question, how come he never put up the full dissertation? For those who don't know, when it was up, it was just the opening pages. There was no text. It was just the abstract. So there is the question, why didn't he pull up the full dissertation? If he's the sort of man who's into self-promotion. And then the next question is, why did he redact the institution from it? And finally, why did he pull the dissertation down, or those initial pages down? I've spoken with some other people who are interested in the subject privately, and including one gentleman who's a seminarian, and they've shared with me the speculation that there was no dissertation at all. And if that's the case, that would be disturbing as well. But I'll
Yeah.
take your
And
thoughts on
and if I could just emphasize this point and really hammer it home. The aforementioned gentlemen, despite what their personalities may lead someone to believe, and despite the fact that they got their degrees from unaccredited places, the unaccredited places that gave them their degrees have an online fingerprint, an online presence, an online footprint. They actually can be found. Whereas Divine Prospects institution has no digital fingerprint, which is very strange given the fact that even unaccredited institutions, places that may be considered diploma mills. I'm not calling the other places diploma mills necessarily. I'm just saying, you have different unaccredited institutions levels. They all have a digital footprint. Why is it that the Vines institution does not have a footprint online at all? Like there's,
it's curious.
these are the kind of institutions that you would expect want people to buy their degrees, want them to actually come to
Hmm.
their place of learning. So you would anticipate that they would be promoting themselves extensively online, especially via social media. But for whatever reason, we can find the place the unaccredited place that gave Will Brown his degree. We can find the place that gave Kelly Richardson his unaccredited degree, but you cannot find Divine Prospects unaccredited institution anywhere.
Which he himself hid. Interestingly enough, hid the name, wouldn't mention the name in his various posts about his doctorate, redacted it from his dissertation on academia. Well, I'll say this though: there are a couple of people in the comments section of my video about this, which are trafficking in the rumor that that the Hebraic Institute of Theology is somehow related to a group called the Hebrew Congregation of Atlanta, which is run by a gentleman named Milt Carnes. I don't know anything about that. I don't I have no idea how accurate that is, but I'm sharing that because a couple of people have shared that rumor in the comment section of my video. But yeah, nonetheless, so maybe it's somehow connected to that. But yeah, the absence of a presence is at the very least
Or the fact
curious, and it
or the
invites
fact that
speculation.
if it does exist, why wouldn't he promote them? You
Exactly.
know, you claim to have he's now in his Instagram post, Kingdom Memories or Moments or whatever. It says something to the effect that he didn't ask for this.
Hmm.
So he could easily say, "Well, I didn't ask for a doctorate. It was an honorary doctorate, and I just,
Hmm.
you know." But then why promote it on your profile as if you have a doctorate? Why
Exactly.
do that?
And he specifically said that he got that doctorate so he could open the door for others to get a similar doctorate. But then why not promote the institution that gave you this
Mm,
opportunity?
exactly. It's very
It's curious to say
curious.
the least.
Curious things. Curious.
Yes.
So on the last section, I think this is a great segue to the final section. We're going to show that one Westers haven't been exempt from this sort of phenomenon.
Hmm.
And for this section, I'd like for you, as someone who intimately would know about this, insofar as being a New York City resident
Hmm.
in the past and having uh, you know uh, seen this firsthand on public
Yes.
access. Yeah, could you speak to this next section, please?
Yes. So when when the ICUPK, the Israeli Church of Universal Practical Knowledge, which was One West, when they fell under the leadership of Tazadakia was very much interested in rebranding, but he seemed to have been drawn in two different directions. In one direction, he seemed to very much be drawn towards Orthodoxy and Catholicism, right? So he introduced the ever virgin doctrine. Yeah, apparently, one gentleman told me that he was teaching that, when they get the powers and take over the world, that he's going to be established as the Pope in Rome, in the Vatican, that uh, that Tazadaka would be sitting as Pope in the Vatican, that they'd reestablish the old Catholic Church that they believe was run by Israelites. But aside from being drawn towards Orthodoxy and Catholicism in one direction, another direction that he seemed to have been drawn towards was towards Kojic and other Protestant churches like that. Like even the name Kojic is the Church of God in Christ. He changed the name of the ICUPK to the Israelite Church of God in Jesus Christ. Even the name seems more than coincidental. And around that time, while he was exploring that avenue of things, he, rather than be, apostle and, chief high priest Tazadaki or whatever his name is, the comforter and all that, there was a period where he wasn't wearing his Israelite garb and instead was wearing a suit and tie. And he had a thing on public access briefly around the year 2000. It was a show called Mysteries of the Bible with Dr. Jermaine Grant. And he would teach classes in a suit and tie, as he was trying to present himself as like one of these pastors, I guess, like a Kojic pastor perhaps, or like a pastor at some of these other churches in New York.
Right. And to back up what Abu is saying, this is from podcasts on Apple, apple.com. And so this is the ICGJC's official Apple Podcasts page on there. And notice that it's called Mysteries of the Bible. Now, if you look on the description, it says Mysteries of the Bible was inspired and founded, Mysteries of the Bible was inspired and founded by the holy God sent comforter, holy apostle and chief high priest, Tazadakia, who is also known as Dr. Jermaine Grant. From the original, from the original radio show that aired every Wednesday in the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that fascinating, right? Now, what I also find fascinating is obviously they're claiming him to be a doctor.
Yeah,
But
and honestly, I don't think there's any institution that gave that to him. I feel confident in the
yeah,
speculation that that was self-imposed.
well, as we'll see right here from this NJ.com article, when it says leader of the church group sentenced on tax evasion charges, and it says right here, here, I'll read at the top. The last leader of the Israelite Church of God in Jesus Christ was stripped of his title and shunned from the church for misusing its funds, Mahoney said. The departure created room for Grant to rise through the church's ranks. The Bronx native dropped out of school at the age of 14 and became a devout parishioner of the Israelite Church of God in Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so
By
he doesn't.
2000,
It
he
seems to be
was its
saying he didn't
leader.
even have a GED, yet he was claiming to have
Yeah,
a PhD.
dropped out of school at the age of 14, yet he's Dr. Jermaine
Wow.
Grant. Isn't that fascinating that we have this pattern of behavior even extending onto our One Westers? And for the record, what makes this more significant is not that it's merely a One West camp. This is quintessentially the One West camp. This is the original school. The Israelite Church of God in Jesus Christ was the original One West, renamed Israelite Church of God in Jesus Christ by Tazadaki, by Jermaine Grant. So
Mm-hmm.
this makes it even more salient that the original school couldn't escape this very behavior, this sort of pattern.
Temptation, yeah.
Yeah.
And that takes us back to, again, we anticipate the objection, like, oh, what are you saying, that their arguments are flawed or weak or automatically false, their conclusions are false if they don't have a legitimate degree? No, we're not saying that. People can be brilliant even if they don't have these degrees. But what we're saying is that, for people to say, well, first off, as Faithful already said, it cheapens the work that was put in by those who earned real doctorates from accredited institutions. But aside from that, if someone's going to raise this, well, who cares objection, it doesn't matter style objection, the point is, these men who took on these titles publicly, they didn't think it didn't matter. They felt it did matter. They saw value in claiming these titles. And that's part of the reason that we showed that letter from Ford that Ford wrote 90 years ago. Because for me, it stands out that Ford said that there's psychological benefit in having this presented publicly. And I think that the men who came after him, not that they're consciously thinking back to Ford, but they're following a similar pattern of logic. They themselves tacitly see psychological benefit in others perceiving them as having attained these titles.
Indeed, it's fascinating to really examine all of this. And the reality is that criticism should be leveled at anybody, regardless of, we're not simply saying if it's Hebrew Israelites, then it's warranted. If it's Christian, it's not. Uh, we firmly stand by the idea that criticism is welcome from all directions,
Hmm.
insofar as it's legitimate criticism. And as it pertains to our Hebrew Israelite friends, uh, this may be an example of where perhaps maybe, hopefully it would motivate some of its claimants to take this stuff seriously. And if they indeed desire to want a legitimate degree or some sort of, doctorate, then they should go through all the appropriate channels to obtain such. In fact, I can say, and this is in no way an endorsement of this group. I'm going to say this right now. This is no endorsement whatsoever, but the Nation of Islam itself recognize this kind of glaring hole. And so you have Dr. Wesley Muhammad, who
Yeah.
himself went through the proper channels to get his degree, his
Yeah,
doctorate.
Dr. Yeah, Wesley Muhammad he has a legitimate PhD from the University of Michigan, a PhD, a doctorate in Islamic studies from the University of Michigan. And the funny thing is, his doctoral dissertation is available online because anyone who's done that pretty much makes it available for the most part. Like for example, David Wood has a doctorate from a university here in New York, and his dissertation is available. I was just looking at it last night on ProQuest. So
Yeah,
yeah, their
David Wood
dissertations
being
are
a
available.
Christian apologist for those who are
Yes.
interested.
Hmm.
So there are legitimate Christian apologists who have doctorates. There are legitimate, even Black empowerment, Black nationalist groups like the Nation of Islam, who themselves have PhD grads among their apologists.
Hmm.
Hebrew Israelism shouldn't be left behind if they're going to be taken seriously. And I'm saying this not as a proponent of Hebrew Israelism, not as someone who endorses the ideology. I remain an opponent of the ideology, but if you're going to claim some sort of higher education in a particular field of theology, then go through the appropriate channels to acquire it. And that way you can give at least legitimacy to what you're claiming about yourself. If you're saying you're a doctor, then you should have a accredited doctorate. You shouldn't have to go through these other channels over here to try to pass yourself off, give off the veneer of some sort of academic credential
Mm.
without actually having it. And again, this in no way is meant to disrespect Hebrew Israelites insofar as the
Yeah.
conversation is concerned. Just because you don't have a legitimate doctorate or a degree in a particular area of theology doesn't mean that we can't engage in conversation. Of course we can. We can certainly engage in conversation.
Hmm.
But I think it would be fair to point out that just as we're being critical of our side, we mentioned James White, and James White clearly, at the very least from what we hear, has taken it seriously enough where he's going through the proper channels to get his doctorate. Then I think the same should be true for Hebrew Israelites who should be taking the proper measures to acquire a proper degree.
And also, just one closing note, because I'll have to go in a moment. But some might ask, like, are we trying to say that these sorts of activities, I'm tempted to say shenanigans or games, but these sorts of activities by a handful of gentlemen, does it reflect badly on the entire Israelite spectrum? I would say no. I know a lot of people don't know about my private life and who I associate with in my private life, but I do know a number of Israelites who are not online or not part of the public discourse or public polemics and all that. Faithful knows a little bit about my private life. In my private life, I know some brilliant Hebrew Israelites. There are brilliant and educated Hebrew Israelites, and as I always say, it's a very diverse spectrum. So what goes on in one corner of the spectrum does not have an impact or does not negatively impact another corner of the spectrum. So we're not saying this is the brush with which we're going to smear the entire spectrum, but nonetheless, yeah, if people are going to claim these titles, honor them, because you're showing them a certain honor, you're showing them a certain respect by presenting them publicly, but show them enough respect to actually earn them through proper channels, or to at least admit that you haven't done so yet. Like I can do that. I don't have a doctorate yet. Who knows if I will? I hope to, but I haven't reached that point yet. And that's something that's always stood out for me is even without reaching that point, I've gone through some grad school. I don't, I have some familiarity with the rigors of academia. And that's why I can see that someone like Kelly Richardson or Will Brown, with all due respect to them, have not gone through the rigors of academia. They haven't even made it as far as I have. And I don't say that to pat myself on the back, but I say it because, one can see that, and so one should show respect for the rigors of academia and for those who
Indeed.
went all the way to a doctorate. It cheapens the whole thing to try to
Correct.
leapfrog to the title unfairly.
Well, on that note, I think we've covered everything. I hope all of you will go back and watch this. I will have the timestamps in the comment section. I will pin it at the top, and I will have the links to check out the resources mentioned in this video in the description after this live stream is done. So, on that note, I appreciate my friend Abu as always for coming through and sharing his thoughts. I appreciate all of you who watched this while it was live, and I appreciate all of you who will watch it after the fact. And on that note, I just want to say I sincerely hope that our Hebrew Israelite friends will take the message in this video seriously. And I hope that even our Christian brothers and sisters will take the message seriously as it also pertains to us, that we should all be transparent and honest about our backgrounds when we're having these discussions. And so on that note, I'm going to end it here. God bless you all. I hope this has edified someone out there. And until next time, take care.